Maybe your parents, maybe your mother read you a bedtime story, and you're thinking about what it would be like to be another person in one of those stories. If you're a girl, the princess, or if you're a guy, the prince, or something like that. Or maybe when you're small, it's probably even simpler things. What the Grinch said at Christmas. The point is, there's a lot going on in a small child's brain, just as there's a lot going on in ours. There's actually a lot going on in a dog's brain, but the difference is the dog isn't thinking about anything about an imaginary world. It's all just stuff that's happened. You, from a very young age, are already beginning to have a huge investment in an alternative universe where yourself enacts stuff and tells the story to itself, this is who I am. But you're not conscious of doing that. You could be, but that little switch hasn't turned on, the gift of abstraction. Later on, you begin every now and then to think, you know what? I'm actually thinking this stuff. I am sitting here reading this book. I'm totally into it. I've gone into a virtual universe where this book has seduced me, and I live in a whole other place. It's not where I'm actually sitting, and yet I'm here doing that. Isn't that incredible? And then you go back into the book. There's a story called The Crystal about a young man who went through all these usual things in life, and he decided what he wanted to do was to search and find the knowledge of how to live in the non-ordinary life. He wanted to be a person who could attain the magic of what it was to be in another place other than the ordinary. Now in this room, we do that by listening to people's performances and watching whatever we do in that process, or listening to you sing. We get kind of swept away in the passion of that. But you know, then lurking in the background is this ordinary thing there. This young man wanted to really inhabit what he thought was a magical world of illumination and enlightenment. So he spent many years, tens of thousands of miles, searching. One day, he found himself in front of the cave of a very ancient sage. And in front of the sage was a large crystal, shining. And he sat down in front of the sage and looked into the crystal's surface, and he found there images of things that he had never heard of, magical things, events, incredible things, things that he couldn't even imagine himself were happening inside of this crystal. He said to the sage, he said, you know, it isn't enough to be a spectator. I want to be able to immerse myself in this light. And the sage said, go ahead. So he found that he could look into the crystal and then walk inside of it and enter into a completely different world that was extraordinary. Not the ordinary world that you and I have lived our lives in, but the other world, the world of your books, your dreams, your nightmares, everything like that. That was the world he was able to enter. After a few minutes, he came out, but he was 10 years older. And without saying a word, the sage handed him a hammer, and he beat that crystal into 1,000 tiny fragments. Beat it down so that it was no more, and there was no more seduction for him. Why would that be? Let's think about that as I tell you this next little piece. During the week, I was privileged. At dinner, I watched television. So one of the TV shows I watched was Friday night. Bill Moyers had a beautiful young woman on. Beautiful in a real sense, you know, not a glossy broad, but a really deep-eyed, beautiful human being who was very upset and very emotionally sad about the reality that our health insurance problem was terrible and we are not solving it. And And she had been arrested trying to get in to see Obama at the White House with a doctor friend of hers. It turns out that she herself was a doctor. And then it turned out not only that she'd been doing this, but she was a key figure in a large group of physicians, all of whom had spent endless time and money figuring out that single payer really works. That the reality is it costs less, it's much more fair to everybody, and there's no reason other than the politics of big business why we don't have it. She wanted to lay her case before Congress. She attempted to do so, occasionally got to talk to congressional committees, and then finally was barred. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because it wasn't on the program for those things to be discussed. You remember what it was like. At a certain point, that discussion no longer took place. She knew, because people told her this, that this word came down from the White House, from Obama. The reason for that is he thought, and many Democrats did, that it was expedient, in order to get anything passed, to not talk about that anymore. Bill Moyers asked her, he said, well, isn't that true? She says, I don't think so. I think it's better to have no bill, and rather than to postpone the tragic death of our own civilization due to the unbelievable way that we treat our sick and not make ourselves healthy. In the long run, we're all going to suffer because of that. He said, we either get that kind of a bill, or that is the wedge that's going to destroy our civilization. That was what she thought, and a lot of people think that. Economically, it's true. Anyway, what was great about her was her ability to communicate her passion and her caring for the fact that we don't take care of our people. Unlike any other Western industrialized civilization, we don't do it. And Obama, early in his rise to power, revealed what he was like, after all, when he was president of the Harvard Law Review, and it was a bold political move that he made. He was a very liberal lawyer, studying to be a lawyer, but he appointed many extremely far-right conservative people to the Law Review Board because he believes that it's good to have the opposing points of view. And in some ways, I think that's an admirable characteristic. At the same time, in this country, it turns out that the 30% of the raving lunatics who are on the right are impossible to be tolerant of. They are not deserving of our tolerance at all. Actually, they are as human beings deserving, but not as a commitment. You can't deal with them, and Obama has not the skill as a leader to get us out of that. It's unfortunate. But we as people can do something. And unfortunately, I think the only thing to do is something that the crystal smasher learned how to do, which is that we can't wish for things to be other than they are. This is actually the world that we live in. I don't think we should ever be ashamed of the fact that we are intolerant of those who are intolerant.
Before that, it used to be chocolate, Bosco, and marshmallow, and caca too. The kids loved having fun with my last name, Coca. Most prefer Coco. Morello used to run his hand over my head and yell out, "Bottle!" while Scalzi would whack me in the back of the head and yell out, "Imogene!" I like the Cokes the best. Jason used to call me the Cokes, and Boomer called me the Coca Man. While driving through Mexico one hot summer, being stopped at one roadblock after another, those federales were everywhere, decked out in black t-shirts and black caps, acting like they ruled the fucking world. At one of the road's blocks, the head honcho, the man in charge, looked at my license and said, "Hey, Coca, 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 you like the cocaine, huh, Coca? You like the cocaine?" And I started daydreaming. Yes, Just like Walter Mitty, the coach likes to daydream too. I saw Zapata come riding down.